Thompson is taking his talents to South Beach. Thompson and the Dallas Mavericks have agreed to a contract buyout, clearing the way for the four-time champion to continue his career in Miami. Shams Charania reporting that Klay plans to sign a 2-year, nearly $13 million deal with the Heat after clearing waivers.
I was shocked. I was not expecting this news.
Breaking news from the NBA, Giannis Antetokounmpo is headed to South Beach.
For over a decade, one franchise built its entire identity on discomfort, on grinding out wins nobody expected them to get, on making opponents dread a night in South Beach, not because of overwhelming star power, but because of sheer collective will and defensive obsession. That era just ended, quietly, without much fanfare at all. In the span of a single offseason, without a farewell tour, without a rebuilding year sandwiched in between the old and the new, a two-time MVP walked through the door first, reshaping the ceiling of this franchise overnight. Then, just days later, one of the greatest shooters this sport has ever produced followed him in through that same door. What emerges from these two moves isn't simply an improved version of the old team fans grew accustomed to watching. It's an entirely different organism wearing the exact same jersey. And the rest of the conference is only just beginning to understand what that actually means for the season ahead.
With the addition of Klay Thompson to the roster, where does the Miami Heat stack up against a much improved Eastern Conference?
Miami built its reputation on a very specific formula for nearly 15 straight years running. Take undervalued talent, overlooked by everyone else, add relentless year-round conditioning, layer in defensive intensity that bordered on genuinely obsessive, and somehow squeeze championship-level results out of rosters that had no business competing at that tier at all. It worked often enough to become a genuine brand, a warning label opposing teams respected even when they didn't fear the roster on paper. That formula is now retired. This offseason, the franchise acquired a former MVP and NBA champion, widely regarded as the single most physically overwhelming player currently playing the sport. That trade alone would have reshaped the franchise's entire ceiling for years to come on its own merit. But it wasn't the only major move made that summer. Just days after finalizing the blockbuster trade, reports surfaced that a future Hall of Fame sharpshooter intended to sign with Miami once he cleared waivers. This wasn't a role-player addition or a depth signing to fill out the bench. This was a shooter who has spent his entire career forcing defenses to account for his location on the floor at all times, joining a superstar who has spent his career watching defenses collapse toward him specifically because nobody beside him could make them pay for it.
Look at what Miami's done. And the X factor, I think, of Erik Spoelstra and what he's capable of doing and finding ways to maximize the talent in the roster. Health being a huge caveat, sure. But if this team is healthy, I think they're definitely going to be a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference.
Here's what gets lost in most conversations about aging veterans this time of year. This particular shooter, now in his mid-30s, remains one of the most accurate three-point shooters in league history, sitting 4th on the all-time made threes list, trailing only 3 names most fans would recognize instantly without hesitation. Last season, even while playing in a diminished offensive role, he still connected on nearly 40% of his three-point attempts, on legitimate volume against real defensive attention. The counting stats tell one story on the surface. The gravitational pull he carries tells another story entirely underneath it. Defenses still track his exact position on every single possession of every single game. Closeouts get rushed because of him. Rotations get altered because of him. That kind of built-in respect doesn't simply disappear just because a player's role changes from one franchise to another. And in this new situation, the role finally fits exactly what he still has left to genuinely offer a contender. His previous team needed him to generate offense largely on his own, night after night. This new team simply needs him to occupy dangerous space on the floor, and that small distinction changes absolutely everything about how valuable he becomes moving forward into this new chapter. Put these two additions together, side by side, and you don't get a slightly improved version of last year's roster. You get a completely different problem for every single team left in this conference to figure out and solve. For his entire career up to this exact point, the newly acquired superstar has faced the exact same defensive counter, night after night, season after season, year after year, without much variation. Pack the interior completely. Dare his teammates to beat you consistently from outside the arc. Live with the drive itself, because nobody surrounding him could reliably punish that specific strategy from deep range. That entire approach is no longer viable starting this season. Try collapsing the defense on a baseline drive now, and you leave one of the most reliable shooters in league history standing completely alone in the exact spot he spent nearly 2 decades mastering, down to the smallest detail. Refuse to help at all, and that same superstar simply overpowers whoever's left guarding him one-on-one in the paint. There is no version of this defensive scheme remaining that doesn't concede something genuinely valuable in return. Send extra bodies at the drive anyway, and the shooter catches the ball with a clean half-step of space against a defense that just gave up a man entirely. Anyone who has watched enough professional basketball already knows exactly how that specific possession usually ends up playing out. Hand most coaches in this league this exact collection of talent, and they'd build something fairly predictable and conventional. Give the ball to the superstar every time down, space the floor loosely around him, and simply hope the results carry through the regular season before a well-prepared postseason defense eventually exposes the predictability underneath it all.
Just tasted winning before, just like I have, just like Bobby, Wiggs, Bam's been there twice, and it's all you really want, you know. It's the standard. Once you get there, it's like you'll do anything to go.
That is almost certainly not what happens here in this particular situation, because the man running this locker room has built an entire coaching career on the exact opposite approach. He's the architect who turned a mid-season acquisition into a genuine finals-caliber force on a roster absolutely nobody believed in at the time it happened. He's built multiple different rosters that had no business being dangerous into teams the rest of the league genuinely dreaded facing every single postseason for well over a decade running. Now he inherits 3 elite players with 3 completely different optimal roles on the floor at the same time. One wants the ball in his hands constantly to attack downhill relentlessly, possession after possession. One is most dangerous moving without the ball at all, reading angles and cutting cleanly through defensive gaps. One thrives operating as a decision-maker from the elbow area, reading the entire floor in real time and finding cutters before help arrives. That's the exact puzzle sitting on his desk this entire preseason, and solving precisely these kinds of complex puzzles has defined his whole career up to this point in ways very few coaches in this league can genuinely match or replicate. Early indications strongly suggest he's already building lineups where his new superstar initiates offense without a traditional ball handler on the floor at all, turning every other single player, including his brand new sharpshooter, into a weapon actively being deployed, rather than a complementary piece simply standing around waiting patiently for a pass to arrive. If that specific vision comes together the way his extensive track record strongly suggests it eventually will, this offense could become one of the most genuinely difficult systems in the entire league to prepare for on short notice heading into a playoff series.
Myself and this upcoming season, it's kind of a redemption season for me to show I can still make an impact on winning and do it consistently. And I just can't really wait to get to work. It's pretty surreal being here, but what an honor it is.
Before getting carried away with the ceiling here, it's worth remembering exactly where this roster started from just months ago. This same team missed the playoffs entirely last season, bowing out in the play-in tournament with a losing record attached to their name. That's the actual floor this experiment is building from, not a contending roster simply adding one final piece, but a team that didn't qualify for the postseason, now betting everything comes together instantly, with multiple veterans at very different stages of their respective careers. The newly signed shooter's 36 years old, and his final season with his previous team revealed real, undeniable physical decline. Lateral quickness has slipped noticeably, defensive intensity has dropped off considerably, his ability to create his own shot off the dribble has narrowed to a fairly limited set of actions. The bet here is that what remains, elite movement shooting and defensive gravity, is enough on its own to matter at a genuine championship level. It might be, it also might not be. And the superstar himself has never operated inside a true multi-star hierarchy before in his entire career up to this point. His previous team was built entirely around his individual needs, every single possession, every single rotation designed with him in mind. Sharing that spotlight with another dominant offensive threat who also needs touches represents genuinely uncharted territory for him personally. There's also no soft landing schedule to help this roster figure itself out gradually either. The season opens against a legitimate playoff team. The defending conference champion still sits in this division. Another rival just built the deepest roster in the entire conference, and a fourth contender remains a genuine threat on paper heading into opening night. This group could look absolutely brilliant within the first month of the season, or it could look genuinely broken apart at the seams. And the difference between those two outcomes might come down to something as simple as whether aging legs hold up over an 82-game grind and whether ego takes a back seat when the situation truly calls for it. This is no longer a franchise quietly hoping the pieces eventually fall into place on their own accord. This is a genuine statement, delivered in July while every other contender around the league was still adjusting to their own individual offseason moves. While one rival added a legendary passer to their core, while another retained its franchise cornerstone through a difficult summer, while the defending champion simply ran things back unchanged in it next season. This team spent the entire summer transforming its complete identity from the ground up. What emerges from that transformation isn't just another playoff contender added to an already crowded pile. It's a genuine unknown quantity, a roster capable of either breaking through completely or breaking apart under its own weight by mid-season if the fit doesn't come together. Nobody around the league knows for certain which version actually shows up in April when it matters most, but every single team left in this conference now has to prepare for the very real possibility that the scariest roster wasn't built through the blockbuster headline trade everyone expected all summer long. It was built quietly, piece by piece, in a summer nobody fully saw coming until it was already finished. Subscribe now because this story is only just getting started, and you genuinely won't want to miss how the rest of this entire season unfolds from here.